This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network as we talk Cleveland Browns football with Fred Greetham. He is a senior analyst with the Orange and Brown Report, powered by 247 Sports, the OBR.com. Fred, first time we've had an opportunity to talk to you on the air. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Greg.
All right, Fred. So you've been covering a team for a long time. We were doing a show a couple of days ago with Mark Lawrence, one of our handicappers. We were previewing the season, and he gave us the week one trend of the year, I guess you could say that. Cleveland won 19-1 since they've returned as a franchise in Cleveland in week one games. That kind of tells the story of the Cleveland Browns since they've returned to Cleveland. A lot of analysts jumped on the bandwagon last year. I was not one of them, but I'm kind of doing it this year. I like the direction of this new coaching staff. There's just way too much talent on this football team, and I'm expecting that they're going to be a much improved team this season.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Last year they really upgraded the talent, but Freddie Kitchens, just wasn't really up for, putting it all together and making it all happen. And this year obviously things are wonky all throughout. You got a new coach who didn't even meet the team until they showed up for training camp a couple weeks ago. But I really like Kevin Stefanski and what I've seen of him organization-wise, and very, very detailed, right down, in practice, very brisk. Obviously, it'll be his decisions once they get going when the season starts. But as far as so far, they just got too much talent on offense, 5 Pro Bowlers at the skill positions. To me, it's all about Baker Mayfield. If Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt can get him right, they'll be very effective on offense. The defense is where the questions lie.
What was there any one specific thing that really was the drawback to Baker's play last year?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think that the tackle play, both on the left and right side, was pretty shoddy, and he was running for his life quite a bit. But the offense just didn't ever seem to be on sync. It seemed like Freddie Kitchens and the offense schemed the first 10, 15 plays as most do. And I think Mayfield had the highest percentage, of leading to scoring drives, like 92% of the time on that first drive or so. But it just seemed like after that, they were lost. And I think that Mayfield was pressing. I would see him trying over and over to get the ball to OBJ, maybe when other times he had other guys open. And I just think there was some pressing all the way around with the higher expectations.
Yeah, and speaking of that offensive line, the team went out and added Jack Conklin on the right side, Jedrick Willis, a draft pick on the left side. Treader has a little bit of a knee injury, but he should be back soon. On paper, this seems to be a much improved offensive line.
Yeah, I think Jack Conklin, when I was writing back in March before free agency what moves they should make, the number one move I listed was go get Jack Conklin, and they did. So I can't really fault that. So he's really taking care of the right side. The biggest question is you got a rookie at left tackle who's literally had no preseason, really no in-camp off-season in Jedrick Wills. He struggled a little bit, and he mentioned the other day, he said, I've dominated at Alabama everywhere I've been, and I get a little discouraged. And they're trying to keep his dauber up. He's going against Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon, and that's going to happen in the NFL. So I think if he can pick it up quickly, they'll be okay. But you got 2 guys behind you, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, that I really think they can rely on and getting the ball to those 2 guys and just make things happen. And that'll go a long way. And then you got Pro Bowl receivers and a tight end. So you just got to find a way to make it simple and get the ball to those playmakers.
Yeah, and Bill Callahan, we know what kind of credential he brings. That was a really nice hire by the staff.
Yeah, he's really done this before, move guys around, and guys like Wills played right tackle. and help guys switch to left tackle. I think the Pro Bowler every year at Dallas, Smith, Callahan had, and I think he came out of college, on one side, and they flipped him to the other side, and he hasn't had a problem. And so that's kind of the resume they're relying on with Callahan and his work. And he said Wills has been positive as progression. So I think, and they've had a little setback. They got another rookie at center. They really could start 2 rookies out of the 5 against the Ravens because nobody really knows with Treader. Treader played on a high ankle sprain 2 years ago, the entire second half of the season, didn't practice the whole week and showed up and didn't miss a snap on Sunday. So something tells me he's going to be ready for the opener, but maybe he won't. We really have had no updates from the coaching staff on where he stands.
Okay. At tight end, the team brought in Austin Hooper. He had a breakout campaign last season for Atlanta, drafted Harrison Bryant in the 4th round. And with David Njoku, boy, you looked at the 3 and it just, wow, this is just some talented threesome. But now there's over the last few months, the news trickling out of Cleveland is that David Njoku wants out. Is that the case? What's the situation with David Njoku? Do you think he's going to be around here much longer?
Well, his agent, he hired Drew Rosenhaus, changed agents and made a statement. His agents said that they expect him to be traded. They want him traded before training camp begins because it's in the best interest of Njoku. The Browns said, no, we're not trading him. He's in our plans. We have too much in store for him.
Yeah.
And Stefanski was the number 1 user of tight ends in the NFL last year. 57% of the time he had at least 2 tight ends on the field. So I think they sold that to Njoku. He came out before training camp and said, I will be in camp and I'm all in. I'm ready to go. And then he said, for the time being, I'm with the Browns, and we pressed him on that. And he said, no, I'm all in. I want to be here long term. Now, whether he does or not, I think he realizes that he caught 5 balls last year. He doesn't have a lot of leverage. The Browns picked up his 5th-year option for 2021 for $6.1 million. I don't even know if he could make that anywhere else. So I think he realizes being under the radar, maybe as even the 6th guy behind the Pro Bowlers, he could have a big year. The defenses can't cover everybody, and it would seem like Njoku and Harrison Bryant could really wreak havoc on defenses underneath.
All right. What about the depth at wide receiver? Higgins was signed late. Donovan Peoples-Jones drafted late. He has the talent. Really to have been a 2nd or 3rd round draft pick when he came out. I'm a Michigan fan, so I followed his career early on. Had some injuries, shoddy quarterback play. He was inconsistent as well. But it seems like there's some good signs already regarding Peoples-Jones that he should make this team. What about if there is an injury to Landry or Beckham? Is there a guy that can make an impact on the bench?
Yeah, I think Peoples-Jones is really impressed. There's no question he's going to be on the team. He's even run some as the 3rd receiver. I think they think he has a good upside. Rashard Higgins, Kadero Hodge, and
Natsun?
Name escapes me. Yeah. Natsun. No, Damian Ratley.
Ratley?
Those
Okay.
are in the contention for the 3rd receiver. But yeah, they have a logjam there. Natson, they signed him as a returner, and he's really not been. They have a logjam at wide receiver. I think they could keep 6 or 7. But Stefanski only uses 2 wide receivers a lot of times. And so they might even, forego with the receivers because, like I mentioned, with Harrison Bryant and Njoku, they can move them outside. So I do think Higgins will be the 3rd receiver. But they really like Hodge and Ratley. So we'll see what happens. Ratley had a groin injury, but he's been back in there, made some plays in the scrimmage last week. So I'm looking for one of those 3 to start the season as the 3rd receiver. And Peoples-Jones, I think, will push for playing time because his talent is all over the place. You can see it with a good quarterback.
And what about Higgins? Because Higgins and Mayfield seem to have a good rapport when Mayfield was a rookie. I know he's had some injury issues, Higgins, but overall he seems like a really nice number three receiver. What's the situation with him? Is was it just a contractual situation why he signed late?
Well, it's interesting because, yes, he had a great year with Mayfield as a rookie. He had 39 catches, and it looked like he was breaking out. And then he started the season last year as the third receiver in the first game. He had a touchdown catch and a 38-yard play. And then he injured his ankle and he missed 4 or 5 games. And then he started talking about that he was ready to come back, and Freddie Kitchens disagreed, and he got into his doghouse, and he really never played much the rest of the year. And there was question he was not going to come back under the former regime, but they seemed to patch things up. They signed a 1-year deal late, and I think they convinced him, hey, there's a future here to get back on the field. So, yeah, he's been quiet in camp, but I think he has the talent and the rapport with Mayfield that they know they can go to him, when a play breaks down. And so I look for him to have a good role in this year's team.
Before we switch over to defense, is Natsun the full-time kick returner for both kick and punting?
Well, it's hard for me to imagine because they signed him and then they drafted Peoples-Jones, and
Yeah.
Peoples-Jones can do so much more. It's hard for me to understand if they could just keep a 5'7", 150-pound guy to just return punts. I think they see him just as a punt returner. Peoples-Jones, I think they really like him to be the kick returner and maybe both. But I think Natsun, they've used him in camp more than you would think in the receiver, running reverses and getting the ball to him. So I'm kind of curious about him tomorrow in the cut downs. He wasn't paid a big amount of money in free agency, so I don't know totally how they feel about him. But as far as I think that they would like Peoples-Jones to handle that, but you turn it over to a rookie to begin with.
Sure. Okay, let's go to defense. And what could you tell us about Joe Woods, the type of defense he wants to instill here? He comes over, knows Stefanski from Minnesota. What's the defense looking like?
Well, we haven't seen really. They've, a little in practice, but obviously no games. I think he's going to run 3 safeties. That was the original plan. They used a high pick to get Grant Delpit, and then he tore his Achilles the first week of practice. So I think he still plans to minimize linebackers, and that was why there was a lack of emphasis on acquiring linebackers. And I think he's going to use 3 safeties or 3 cornerbacks a lot. You're going to see more of like a 4-2-5 a lot, on defense. But that's kind of what his mantra was in the past, and I think that's what he'll continue to doing.
And the Delpit injury, not only was that bad news for the kid, but also the word was that he really looked good. And a lot of people were surprised that he lasted until the second round. But and the Browns appeared to have gotten a steal. So the injury was a real tough one, not only for the kid, but for the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. He had first round talent, but he played with a high ankle sprain most of the season. So he was, kind of like not at 100% and showing the grit from that aspect. But yeah, he was really looking good in camp. And like I said, I think they were really planning on building around him. They signed Carl Joseph and Andrew Sendejo as free agents, but put them on 1-year deals. And I think they're planning on Delpit being the free safety and kind of the centerpiece, and then seeing if Joseph could be a long-term answer and Sendejo to be the third. Now, they traded for Ronnie Harrison yesterday and given up a 5th-round pick. I think they obviously like him and must figure that he can step into the rotation there. But yeah, the safety needed to be overhauled. They replaced all the safeties from a year ago, and we'll see what happens now with the guys they have.
And as far as the cornerback position, looking at the depth past Ward and Greedy Williams, Kevin Johnson, he just can't stay healthy. And it's unfortunate because it looked like he started to, last year with the Bills, started to come on a bit. The team also brought in Lumba. So talk a little, and AJ Green, an undrafted kid out of Oklahoma State, uh, one of those kids that you just surprised wasn't drafted, and he sure has looked the part of a drafted kid. So AJ Green, does he get an opportunity to play as a rookie? And what is the depth? How is it looking like as far as the cornerbacks past the starters?
Well, their secondary has been really hit hard with injuries. Beside Delpit, cornerbacks 2 weeks ago, Denzel Ward was the only one of the top six cornerbacks on the field. Number 2, 3, 4, and 5 were injured. Greedy Williams went off the day Delpit tore his Achilles with a shoulder injury, and we have not seen him since. The coach says he's day-to-day, but usually day-to-day guys are out on the field with the trainer. We have not seen him. The third, like you said, was Kevin Johnson, lacerated liver. He's on the field watching, but he's not practicing. We don't know his timeline. And then you had Terrence Mitchell, who injured his knee. He's back practicing. And the fifth one, MJ Stewart, guy they picked up on waivers, has been out with a hamstring. So I think their corners are really been limited. AJ Green has been a bright spot. Denzel Ward said he's the guy that caught his attention. They paid $145,000 in guaranteed money to bring him in. I think he'll make the team. And then beyond that, I don't know with Donovan Olumba. He's had to get some time on the field because of the other injuries, and he might be able to find his way onto the roster. We just really don't know where some of these injuries stand. Kevin Stefanski has been even more tight-lipped about injuries than really any coach I've remembered. I mean, Freddie Kitchens talked about stuff, but Stefanski has said it from the beginning. He doesn't say much more than, yeah, he wasn't out there. And so we really don't know. We'll see on these roster cuts, or some of these guys get put on injured reserve, then we'll know they're more serious than they've led on to be. But I think that Denzel Ward has had a history of injuries, and he's been the most durable out there. So we'll see if Kevin Johnson can come back. They need him. But Terrence Mitchell, I thought, really played well 2 years ago. And last year, for whatever reason, he fell in the doghouse and didn't play. A lot of people didn't think he'd be around. But right now, he's the starter opposite of Ward.
What do you think, before we close up with the front seven, I wanted to ask you about, because you brought up injuries, what do you think about this particular season that's about to kick off in 6 days, where we don't have the preseason? There seems to be a lot of at least little injuries around the league. And I think maybe there are more serious than the coaches are letting on. It's just very strange. As a Jet fan, it's the same thing. There's a laundry list of injuries that Adam Gase has to talk about every day. Do you think that without preseason and without the limited amount of time out there this offseason, that maybe when the season starts, it could actually impact the health of the players more? Like, if you had a guess, do you think that maybe we'll see more injuries early on in the season?
Well, I do, because these guys did have the preseason, which was, as little as they played anyway, but they did get hit. I mean, we talked to Nick Chubb yesterday. He hasn't been hit. I mean, they have pads, but they don't really hit. And so you're really not going to get hit until you get on the field. Now Chubb did get hit by an overzealous linebacker, grabbed him by the neck, and he actually was forced into concussion protocol. But as far as, they haven't taken those hits, and I do think you're going to see, injuries from that aspect, and even the soft tissue, because, guys are accelerating and pulling hamstrings and muscles that maybe they haven't used as of yet. So I think it could be teams that survive through attrition and who don't get buried in the early part of the season are the teams that are able to be alive in the second half of the season.
Okay, linebacker, and as you mentioned, is probably going to be the use of two more than 3 or 4 from standard defenses, but we don't play standard defenses anymore, it seems. But Mack Wilson, his injury was a pretty significant injury too. He was the best linebacker going into the season after being a rookie 5th-round draft pick last year. So, what about the loss of Wilson? How does that affect the defense at linebacker?
Well, most of the people that follow the team felt that the linebacker was the weakest position, assuming that they didn't put that high of a value on the position. Then Mack Wilson went down. Really don't know how long he's going to be out. Originally, they thought maybe it was season ending. Then they said he didn't need surgery, called it a 4 to 6 week injury. Don't know if that means it happened August 18th. So has he already 2-3 weeks into it? Or is it 4 or 6 more weeks? The Browns really have not given a timetable. But yes, they have B.J. Goodson, who's been a journeyman with the Packers and the Giants. He's going to be the middle linebacker, it appears. He's hoping to be on the field three downs. He's had trouble with coverage. But then you have Jacob Phillips, who you drafted in the 3rd round from LSU. He's been running with the starters. And then Sion Takitaki, who was 3rd-round pick last year, really never got on the field. He started out with an injury and never caught up. So you have guys with inexperience. They brought in Malcolm Smith recently when Wilson got injured, and him and Goodson probably have the most experience, but they really do need Wilson to get back sooner than later. But you're going to have a lot of guys probably trying to find their way, in the early part of the season, see what fit.
So Phillips is a 3rd rounder, has an opportunity to play a lot of snaps for what they're expecting, at least at one of those 2 linebacker positions, the outside linebacker position opposite Goodson.
Yeah, that's what it's looking. Well, Taki's out there too, so it could be. We've seen Taki, Goodson, and Phillips kind of those rotation.
Okay.
And Wilson would probably step back into where Phillips was, when they get there. But they're really Taki's been out there, and I think he's given every opportunity to be the starter, one of the starters.
Okay. And up front on the defensive line, do you expect a bounce back season from Olivier Vernon? And of course, Myles Garrett is coming off a controversial season. So there's that, but we know how talented he is. Do you think this is going to be a big season up front? Because it really has to be, especially with some of those concerns in the secondary for this defense.
Well, I think it's all about their health. Last year, Vernon got hurt, and missed pretty much the last half of the season. And that has been his problem in recent years. But Garrett, we all know the suspension for the final 6 games, but the defense really fell apart when he was off the field. They were pretty good when he was on the field, even against the run, because it seems like teams, they ran away from him, they schemed, and he was pretty good holding down that one side. When he was off the field the final 6 games, teams went out at everybody, and they gave up over 150 yards on the ground a game average. So I think he makes a big difference, not only in the pass rush, but all the way around. And so then you have Sheldon Richardson, who's probably their best defensive lineman over the 16 games because Garrett was missing. And Ogunjobi, they're hoping for a bounce back year. He really had a lot of promise last year, had kind of a so-so season. So I think Vernon is key. But they brought in Adrian Claiborne. Interesting. He was ranked by, I think, PFF as like the 9th best pass rusher in disrupting last year. And so if he can really help out, spell Vernon and Garrett, I think that will go a long way. And it'll make the secondary, as you said, look a lot better when you get heat on the quarterback.
Any word as far as, or have you noticed anything from Jordan Elliott, the 3rd-round pick?
Yeah, he's looked pretty good, and I think he's going to be in the rotation, especially Andrew Billings was one of the more significant signings they had. He happened to opt out with the COVID, and that was really kind of a big blow because he was looked on to be a run stopper on the defensive line. So Jordan Elliott's going to probably step right into that rotation, and they're hoping another guy or two, finds their way onto the field.
What's going on with Chad Thomas? Is he going to battle for just making this team?
Well, it depends how many defensive ends they keep. Actually, Porter Gustin, a guy they picked up late last year, and he played the last couple games after Garrett and Vernon were out, and he actually looked pretty good. He's really had a great training camp, and he was filling in for Garrett when he was out with a hamstring, and he got to the quarterback more than any other rusher. So I'd say Gustin's ahead of Thomas. It depends how many they keep. I think Gustin's the fourth defensive end, and Thomas might be fifth or even sixth. I haven't heard a lot about him. I know Barry was part of the draft when they drafted him, in the third round 3-4 years ago, but he hasn't really taken advantage of his opportunity. We'll see if he latches onto the team or not. I think he will, but I don't know, if he's even in the top four right now.
Okay, and not only is Stefanski new and Joe Woods is new to the team, but what do you make about Andrew Berry, the new GM? From the time, of course, you've been around a lot of GMs here in Cleveland, so another young GM in the NFL.
Yeah, to me, it's all about making the picks. Of course, he's linked to being with Sashi Brown, when they went 1-15 and 0-16, but he didn't have final say, so you don't know if, where he was on some of the recommendations. If, I can only judge him on this year.
Sure.
It looks like this year's picks were pretty good, but we won't know. I think Delpit was a big key, and we're not going to see him. But yeah, in some of these lower rounds like Elliott and Phillips, are they going to be able to step in? Peoples-Jones, are they going to be able to make the team and make impacts? But I've been impressed with Barry. He's very organized. It does seem that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Barry and even Paul DePodesta are all on the same page. And we've had more than our backbiting and bickering among the coaches in the front office. We'll see once the season goes, but they've been in lockstep so far. So I've been impressed with Barry. He's been out in front. He's been proactive in making aggressive moves, and we'll see. We'll see how that bodes for this season.
And finally, the special teams. How's it looking? Pretty average last year. They wanted to add Natsun to improve their kick return game, and they've done that. You mentioned, of course, drafting Peoples-Jones as well. Do you feel pretty good about what they have there in their kicking game?
Yeah, last year they went with two rookies at punter and kicker, and Austin Seibert and Jamie Gillen. Gillen had a good rookie year. Seibert started good, but he had trouble. He had more trouble on PATs than he did on field goals.
Yeah.
He's been fine so far this year. Is a little curious. They never brought in any competition for either guy, but they did work out a bunch of kickers. And I think if he struggles, they may go another way. But I do think with Peoples-Jones and Natson, they've upgraded the team. And I think that Mike Prefer, he's, special teams coordinator. It's a pretty good one. And he's pretty pleased with what he has. And I think that, they're going to keep some of the core special teams players on coverage and blocking and so forth. So I think that will, go a long way in helping the return game.
Okay. And lastly, we mentioned AJ Green. Any other rookies, undrafted rookies or late round rookies that have caught your eye?
No, because of the limited training camp, they're just working to get the starters ready. You don't really see a lot of them out there unless there's injuries and so forth. I think Javante Moffitt, a safety from Middle Tennessee, has made some plays. AJ Green, a lot of those guys are getting on the field because of the injuries in the secondary. But, because you can have, I think, 16 on the practice squad, most of these guys are going to find their way back onto the team. I think 69 out of the 76 legitimately could be on the roster, either on the practice squad or on the 53 next week. So, no, I think AJ Green's probably been the best of the undrafted free agents. Harrison Bryant's been the best rookie, of camp, as far as overall, played very well. I'd say Peoples-Jones was second.
Okay. Fred, great job. Thank you very much for educating us on what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. And finally, the Orange and Brown Report. Can you tell us a little bit about that? The OBR.com?
Yeah, we have everything covered, from film studies to inside rumors and what's going on, behind the scenes. And I'm covering every day and thoughts and analysis from the field. We're credentialed. We're on the field, one of the few that's allowed to go this year. And so the OBR.com, Orange and Brown Report, all you need.
Fred,
You can follow me on Twitter.
Yep, at Fred Greetham again, and you can see that there on the crawler there. Appreciate it, friend. I look forward to talking to you hopefully during the season.
All right. Thank you, Greg.